One of the most common questions as we started with, that customers come to me and ask is that, how do we adopt these new tools to become more efficient, right? And that's sort of what we've talked about up till this point. And then how do I secure myself, making sure that I have a strategy in place to not be left behind? That's also something we've addressed up to this point. But I think what we haven't discussed is what if these tools are such revelatory in its essence that you need to shift your business as well, and you need to think differently. I think a lot of these businesses they see these tools as an enhancer. They can just go on doing the same processes as before, and they just replace the hammer with a nail gun, and all of a sudden they can do things really fast. But what if these tools can give you more? And they can already, actually. They can give you better ways of thinking about things, be more creative about things. And with that said, if you have a process where you need to induce these concepts of creativity, maybe you shouldn't go about your creative process in the same way. Maybe you can think about replacing parts of your process or changing your process. You shouldn't be so stuck with the fact that I've been doing it in this way, I will never do it in a different way. Mm-hmm. You need to face the fact that these tools could be so revelatory in nature eventually, so you need to rethink business concepts. And from our side, one important thing is that we make a living of selling consultancy. That's what we do. We send bills for billable hours, basically. That's what we do. Now, if I have an AI tool where I can produce my work twice as fast, that will end up, if I have a contract, setting me up where I will actually charge half the time. Mm. So why would I spend time on a tool making me less profitable?
Yeah.
That's so I think just in that space, we need to change the process to align maybe more on results. We're delivering results and we get remunerated for our results rather than, the hours we spend.
I agree, but I also think that these new tools, where we can augment code generation, for instance, so that we don't have to generate all of the code manually. I think a lot of projects are being scrapped because the business case is just not there if we do it manually.
Yeah.
So I think this opens up not necessarily Pandora's box, but to some degree, Pandora's box of new business opportunities for, a lot of different companies.
Yeah.
To enhance a process to start with that they did not enhance because the cost was too high. So if we can then do it on half the time, it might be relevant to actually do these processes.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think I agree. It should be more on value, or at least that should be part of the math. But I also think that it is us, if we're thinking about Columbus here, we need to think differently. So we need to think, okay, this might have been worth 500 hours 5 years ago. Right now, it might only be 200 hours worth of value.
Yeah.
But it's a mixture. It's a balance, like everything else here. And it's not just Columbus. It's everybody who's standing in this.
And what's even more interesting is that what if everyone has these tools?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you make sure you differentiate yourself in a marketplace? I think we will need more humans in the mix to make sure that we're special and people are choosing these specific ways of doing it because it's been augmented by humans.
So I can say what we do in Columbus, and that's by no means a revolution, but it's good.
Yeah.
So we have a 4-part process. The first step of the process is in play to not kill enthusiasm within the organization. So if we have an enthusiastic employee that want to try a new tool, we can do that, but we will silo it completely so it does not affect Columbus at all if it breaks something.
Yeah.
Then we have a stop-go decision between every part of these different process steps. And that means that if we then move forward, or if we stop it, it might not be a full stop. It might be revisit this in 6 months' time or 12 months' time because this is relevant, but not there yet.
Yeah.
Then we move forward into a sandbox environment, for instance, where we have maybe demo data or might even have some Columbus data, but still very limited and very sandboxed. And then next is where we find the cohorts, so where we find the people, the like-minded people that would like to take part in a process. And that process is, from my perspective, the most important process or part of the process, where we actually align expectations more broadly. We do contact the business to find the business cases. We use the different, not use in a bad way, but we use the users in the best way possible to get the best possible outcome. So we go to them and say, do you get something out of this? We do measurements. If we don't, well, again, we can stop it or revisit it again. And then the last step is generally availability. And that doesn't mean that it should be available to everybody, for instance, but it means that there is a process as to whom should be able to acquire this or to use this. And it's a very simple process, but it just makes sure that we keep security in place, we have the scalability in place, we have the ROI in place, and we do that keeping the enthusiasm within the users. Is it perfect? No, but it's better than having nothing. So again, that's finding a process within the realm of possible, within the technology landscape, within the financial landscape that is present. And I think that's a good first step for a lot of companies to start.
I agree. Actually, the thing is that we also can see these different projects not as viable projects that we have to deliver a perfect result with. It can also be a starting process for organizations to start adopting new tools into their organization. Because there's a learning curve currently. There's a learning curve where you need to understand the art of possible using these tools. And I think for most organization, you have to see it before you understand it. When we introduced Copilot, Microsoft Copilot products in Columbus, people are, the first thing, they didn't really know how to use it, right? You really need to, like in your kitchen, you need to provide a cookbook. Here's a cookbook. Here's all the recipes, and here's what you can do. And people have cooked meals their entire life, and they still think about, what should I cook tomorrow? It's weird, right? Yeah. Because they go to a cookbook or they go to the internet. Whereas we're now demanding for them all of a sudden, without prior training, to understand what to cook. With ingredients they don't know what they're all about. So there's a huge gap between people just thinking about how to use these tools. So I think a lot of times one way to just adopt is to train.
Yeah.
And the way to train is to set it in a context where you're using it in your daily business. So it gives benefits immediately back. So if you give a tool or you give a solution to somebody and say, yeah, this is going to solve that problem, they will use it, right? Because as long as they solve that problem, and then they will learn. Expecting people to learn on themselves, within the space, it won't work. Because what we're seeing today, on all the meetings I have, the larger meetings, I always ask this question, right? So I ask, how many people are using these tools in the daily workspace or workplace? And the really intense users is normally just like 15-20% still. They're using it on a daily basis, the rest is once a week or something like that. And I'm just thinking, if I can become, which I am, a lot more efficient using these tools, why aren't everyone? Well, then I think it's a mindset, because people who are already efficient, they will look for even more efficient ways to become efficient, right? And they have this adaptability to actually figure out how to use things in a way that makes sense to them. These people, they have a responsibility in their organizations. So you need to find these people in your organizations and you say, hey, you guys, or girls for that matter, you need to figure out how we can transform all that capabilities you have using these tools and knowledge onto the rest of the people.
Yes. So use them as, stakeholders to actually...
ambassadors or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know within Columbus, we're building, portals to do that, and we're trying to share knowledge, and we're doing podcasts, and we're doing a lot of things. But I think when I speak to organizations, they ask me, how can I adopt? And you train them, is what I say. Well, how do we do that? Well, you get people really good at it first. And how do I do that? You start using it. And where should I start using it? Well, find a problem that could be solved with this. And that's when it usually stops, because it's not the lack of tools. It's the lack of change management in their organization. They don't have a good visibility on where are they now. So I'm very fond of TOGA F and that enterprise architecture framework, and what we were looking at where we are at now, as is, where are we in the organization in terms of digital transformation right now, and where are we heading to be, right? And between those areas and points in time, it's a map, it's a roadmap, right? Surprisingly, a lot of organization with size, they don't have that across all domains. They have maybe one ERP roadmap. They have one, and in the past, ERP covered everything, right? Yeah. It's not doing that anymore. We have so many microservices covering everything, right? So, and then we have HR, and then so they're all their own sort of beasts within their organization. So a lot of times, in order to get efficient use of these tools, you need to first understand what are your capabilities, understand where you're at right now. So everything starts usually with our department internally, strategy and growth, I think they're calling it. And you need to map out holistically your capabilities and how good you are in the space before you can even change. But we oftentimes work the other way around. The organization is the tail is wagging the dog. So you have the IT organization is trying to control the rest of it, whereas business should tell you what the problem is. And so that's something I'm trying to say. But then they think I'm really boring, right? So, well, you came here to talk about AI. Yeah, we can do that. But I can tell you how AI can help you if you tell me your problems. And then he goes, I'm not so sure we have that many problems.
And I agree. And the next step after you have done these, strategic, points that you want to work with, is to get your platforms in place. Because if you don't have good platforms where you can actually,
very good. Yeah.
Expose the data, expose the right data at the right time, the right, level of complexity that you want in that specific case. Yeah. Then, it's very difficult. And then it will be a very large project, every single project. So a lot of the talks that we have right now with the clients, where we do these envisioning workshops, and also the initial data strategy workshops, or not data strategy, but that's actually part of it, but AI strategy workshops, then we also talk about data strategy, data platforms, fabric, all of that, because that's very important to actually have that in place to gain the full, gain the full
efficiency out of it. Yeah.
Exactly, out of the investments that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'd say, luckily, a lot of clients are aware of this. So it's not something that we need to impose into an AI workshop, but we definitely underline the fact that it is important when we go there. And that's not a simple task.
No, and there's organizations have different maturity in terms of what they're expecting, and so you will have all these parallel projects also inside organization and separate organizations, where some parts of the organization have moved a lot further than other parts of the organization. We see that working with large enterprises, that, as I mentioned, customer service bits are far ahead. We today can replace, as long as we have the recipes of how we deal with our customers, we can largely replace all customer interactions with these tools. That's what we can do. We can even do it in video, real-time avatars, whatever. And so that's not the problem. The problem is to find a way for enterprises to understand that specific areas in the business is more equipped for that type, and it has nothing to do with AI. It has to do with, as you say, access to data, access to process, how you're organized. If you have a very dispersed organization, dispersed data, that's going to make it more tricky for you. So coming up with a way where you organize yourself in a more like a modern data platform, if you may, is a good approach, right? That's and all these cloud data providers and all these cloud data service companies, where you have like Microsoft Azure and Amazon and Google, they're aware of this, and they've been changing the way they've been setting up these infrastructure for years, right? So it's nothing new. It's coming, right? So
absolutely.
And if you are trying to get most access to these new tools in the fastest and the cheapest way possible, I think to partner up with somebody who really understands these various providers' capabilities is the best way. I mean, to buy today platforms or solutions or platforms is the simplest way, because the capabilities within those platforms will grow. Today, these LLMs are, I don't know, the equivalent of I don't know if a younger person, right? Trying to solve a problem for you. You wouldn't send that younger person to say, can you give me some insights on all the business data inside your organization? That wouldn't work. But eventually these tools will grow and become something else. So if you are investing more in a platform than individual tools, you're providing an infrastructure for the future. So I think it's better to invest there and to find, like, I built this really cool LLM tool that can translate text into whatnot, and we spent 80% of our research budget just on that, and everyone said, yeah, cool, we saved a lot of money this year, but you might be ahead for the future. So investing in platform is never wrong, is what I'm trying to say.
And in this case, if you invest in the platform, it makes the AI projects easier, cheaper, and faster, because you don't need to reiterate over your data infrastructure all of to start with when you actually engage in these AI projects. So that is why we talk about it on these different AI Envision workshops.
Yeah. The top questions, and when you meet our customers or out talking about this, what are their main concerns that you cannot solve today?
Interesting question. I think, and this is to some degree the FOMO that we talked about in the beginning, the fear of missing out. So sometimes we encounter a customer that just says, I want one of those AIs. And then I say, well, what kind of AI and within which realm are you talking about? And are we talking about database? Are we talking about generative AI? And then we actually have a lot of these talks where we then take it a bit further down. But the main misunderstanding that I get right now is that they are worried that they're left behind. And just to underline that, they are not left behind right now. It is fine starting now. And that doesn't mean that they have to climb Mount Everest before they can get something out of it.
No.
That's the main misunderstanding right now, I think.
Yeah, I agree, actually. There's a lot of fear. That's what I'm hearing also. And the first thing I say normally is that, well, you've invested in some sort of a platform, right? You either whether it's Microsoft or whatever. In order for them to stay in business, and some of these companies obviously really good. They stayed in business a very long time. The entire IT area, right? They will make sure that they will enhance their platform in a way with all these capabilities that you need to stay, competitive. So you don't need to do that thinking for them. Now, what you need to concern yourself is about the unique processes for your business vertical, right? That's where you need to focus and not become generic.
Exactly. Become very specialized. To start with. And then, do not misunderstand or underestimate the human nature when you're doing these projects. That's another message that we're really conveying in these workshops, envisioning workshops and strategic workshops on AI. So it's there is a kind of misconception that to some degree it's plug and play, also culture-wise, and it is not. It is, if you just want to have a festive song generated where it can hallucinate as much as you would like it to, and well, that's the scope, then absolutely, that's fine. That's plug and play. But if you want to have an experience where it stays within a fixed set of boundaries, data-wise, if you want to make sure that it communicates within a specific way, so not as a pirate or something else, then that's part of the solution that you need to create. And that requires some thought. It requires some knowledge. And again, that has to be put into a strategy in order to make these projects work together.
So sum up, in order to get AI working for you today, you need to spend time. Because it's not a silver bullet. We established that. That shouldn't stop you from starting.
Exactly.
Just get on with it, because you need to start getting into space and learning these tools, because the only thing stopping you from getting efficiency is actually learning the limitations of the existing tools. And the only way to do that is using them, right? And the best way to use them, apply it to your business, try to solve problems with it.
Align expectations when you
and
apply it.
If you want to discuss this more after this podcast, you can ring us up and just get us on the phone, and or in a meeting, we can discuss whatever we can do in that space if you have problems coming up with ideas. And that's sort of sums the current situation, I guess.
I fully agree. So call up Mr. Wizard if you want to discuss it more.
Thanks, Stefan. Thanks.
Thank you, Magnus.